but also global history. Finally, the last article in this sequence is from our National History Day coordinator in Louisiana. She's also the director of teaching and learning for the National World War II Museum. And she's going to work on an article on how to approach African American history for National History Day topics. So those are the overview. Again, we're trying to bring the best experts and the cutting edge research, but in a format that will be accessible. When they write, they're writing short articles. The goal is to have an article of about 3,000 words. But those articles also link out to resources for teachers. They link to current scholarship. Hey, these are the 5 really good books if this is what you're interested in. And we're taking our teachers' content knowledge and pedagogy and bringing it up to speed with what's being talked about in the circle of historians, cultural experts, museum educators today. The second part of the resource is 3 lesson modules that we hope will be expandable. So we said, okay, there is no way we are teaching all of African American history in one resource. That's not possible, right? It's we're saying we're going to teach all of America. There's no way. But instead we chose 3 themes to start with. Look at the history of enslaved people, the theme of migration and movement, and rights and responsibilities. Because we feel that these are 3 areas where there's some really interesting new scholarship, new stories coming out. And that's what we want to introduce our teachers to. Now, each of the modules will contain 3 components. The first is 1 to 2 articles on the latest scholarship. So we're engaging with different historians to say, hey, what's being talked about in these circles? Because our teachers don't have exposure to the university community so much. We're pairing that then with a sample lesson plan by a master NHD teacher, some of our best teachers from across the country. So here's the ideas. Here's one example. Let's talk about how to put it in practice, engaging with the interesting primary sources and those active learning strategies. But then third, we're also working on a multimedia component. We know that audiovisual work, when done well in a short classroom format, and we're talking about 5 to 8 minutes, can engage students. It can also help students, especially when we start lessons with a simple video, that can help place them into context. It also helps to level the field, because in a classroom, I don't care what age students you're teaching, I taught a lot of 7th grade. Students come into your room with all different levels of knowledge, maturity, skill sets, and background. And one thing that we think is important is to set students up for success. So if we're going to talk about, for example, exodusters and African Americans moving west in the late 1800s, we need to help them know, well, what was the Homestead Act? Why were people going west? Who were these people, and what did they hope to do with this movement? So we're creating the multimedia components to go at the top of each lesson. Those will be a combination of narration, but also some experts, which I may be pulling some of you in to bring in some of your expertise on there. The 3 lessons that will be in this phase, the first is going to be on the history of enslaved people. And we're partnering with our NHD team in Mississippi, the Mississippi Department of History and Archives. When we talked about doing this, we said it was very important that we not just talk about people, but we listen to the people. We engage with primary sources of what people had to say, and we're looking at experiences in the right before and right after emancipation. So we're engaging students with that content. In the second lesson, this is the lesson on Exodus. I've learned an awful lot about exodusters and working on these resources. And this is from a teacher out in New Mexico, actually our 2023 Teacher of the Year. And she said, we don't talk nearly enough about African Americans in the story of going west. And we don't talk about the reality of these communities that they created and the legacies that those created that played out. There's a reason why Brown v. Board comes out of Topeka, Kansas. And it's because of the legacy of many of these families who went west. The third lesson, we're looking at civil rights, but we're going to look not at the 1950s and 60s, where most students think civil rights happened, but we're going to go back and take a look specifically at the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, and some of the movements to help students see that the traditional narrative is not the real story, and that this is a long and continuing struggle that peaks at different times, but is a continuing force in American history. That's a very quick overview, and I know I only have about 5 more minutes. But what I would love to say before I open up for questions is that we would love to engage you and your expertise in what we're doing here. The first opportunity is, I know that many of you, because I've researched your biographies, have backgrounds in some of these topics. And we are seeking historians or experts to be interviewed for the videos we're creating. These are designed to be short interviews. Again, we're creating a 5 to 8 minute classroom segment. So we'd send you 3 or 4 questions, we'd set it up over Zoom and do the interview. If you would be willing, I would love to have you. The second opportunity, if you have not seen History Day and you are in the DMV area, we would love to have you come out and judge at the NHD National Contest. So thank the top 3,000 students from around the world to show up to share their love and their projects about